Vito.
Whoa.
Hit me with the cookies, Vito.
Oh my gosh,
So
I
look
can
at those.
smell them.
They smell so
Aren't
good.
they pretty? But like, look at, I was going to hold it up here. Coming up on Need to Know, Pamela Anderson's sourdough starter, Australia Day cookies, and experimenting with baking substitutes. That and everything else you need to know. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Need to Know. I'm your host Gemma Stafford, professional chef, cookbook author and creator of Bigger Bolder Baking. And as always, I'm joined by Gemma's lovely ladies, Ami Shukla, who is the culinary director here at Bigger Bolder Baking, and Tiana Cohen, who is a professional host and an amateur baker.
Hello.
Hello ladies. How are we doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk about all of our topics today because as we're getting into the new year here, I'm seeing so many amazing things online. I feel like people are really embracing baking, the new year resolutions. And so I thought I would just jump right into it. If you're ready, coming to you hot from the oven is sourdough baking. I feel like we've talked about this now a few times, but like sourdough and New Year's resolutions like go hand in hand to me. And it made me think of how Pamela Anderson was on the Late Show with Colbert talking about her sourdough. Mm-hmm. And she said that she's a 3-year-old sourdough starter named Astrid Viking Warrior Princess. She actually said it, named Astrid Viking Warrior Princess. But I just thought it's so amazing to see how even celebrities get into this idea of sourdough baking and taking on the challenge and then fostering it for years. Mm-hmm. So then I went even down a deeper dive on sourdough and just sourdough making online. And I actually found a lot of horror stories of sourdough. From like weird, sluggish sourdough growth. There was one woman on TikTok who her sourdough starter started getting this like weird blue color. Did you see that?
I did see that.
I wonder what happened. I mean, that seems like there must have been something in the water or the cup that, her container was, or the spoon she was using to stir the starter. Something was going on with like there was some.
That's not on there?
Yeah, no, it's not.
No, even if you don't have to sanitize anything, but even if you just have a clean spoon and a clean jar and you're stirring stuff,
That's not normal.
Fallen into it. But she said it's happened a couple of times that she's got a weird mold on that.
For bacteria to grow, like if you watch the video, for those of you, the link is in the show notes. To grow mold like that on a starter is quite unusual. So like Ami said, there was some sort of something, it was not, I'd say, clean, or something went in there that maybe shouldn't have.
Yeah, some other substance.
Yeah.
Like maybe there was like a bit of other food on the spoon she was using, or
maybe she had like, maybe it's not just a regular flour and water. Like some people put potatoes in theirs, like other different things. So, she never said that, but, it just, that was definitely unusual.
Yeah. So something else that I see is that the starter almost looks like it's like alive and moving. Why does it do that?
There's very different. There is, well, number one, it is alive.
Oh, scary.
So that's why it does it, because it is alive.
That's why it has names. I understand.
But I can even show you my sourdough starter in the fridge right now, which is, hers was very liquidy. So when you I don't know about your feed on Instagram and TikTok, but mine is full of sourdough videos and sourdough, lady sourdough and sourdough bakeries and whatever. And you can see these lovely, bubbly, healthy sourdoughs. And then you can see ones that like hers that are like light bubbles. It's very liquidy and kind of oozy, and just like that's not regular. And no, like I said, why does it do it? It does it because it's alive. But there's something not right with that. Yeah. And you can tell, it's like with a lot of baking, you can always tell like the cookies will tell you when they're done. They're like, you'll know when your cake is done. Something is wrong there.
Yeah.
When bacteria grows like that, there's nothing you can do. You just have to throw it out. With sourdough, you'll think like, well, what about the discard? It goes grey on top, and there can be hooch, which is that like that grey water. Which is like alcohol, and you can discard that, no problem. That's natural.
Can you also stir that back
No,
in?
don't. No,
Oh,
no, no,
oh,
no.
you're
You
not supposed
discard
to.
it right off.
Oh, really?
You weren't doing that with my sourdough, were you? No, you weren't. No, you discard that right off. You do not mix in hooch.
Oh, really? Why?
Yeah, it's alcohol and it's not.
It won't taste good.
No, it will not taste good, and it's not going to give you a healthy starter.
I see.
So you remove that, and if there's any grey on top of your starter, you also remove that, and then you feed again. And I've done this a million times where you can bring it back to life, but with mold you can't.
Huh.
Hooch, as in like they.
Booze.
Yeah, but you didn't put that in it. Like the sourdough made that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's fermented.
Because of these sugars and everything, it's fermented.
Oh my.
Yeah.
No wonder people are obsessed with sourdough. They're also making alcohol on the side.
So I have a confession. I was given some sourdough starter like a year ago, and I put it in my fridge, and I kept meaning to do something with it, and now it's been like a year and a couple of months,
Wow.
and I haven't opened it. Should I just throw it away, or should I open it and see what's happening? It's been it's been over a year. I was given it like last November.
I definitely, and I've done this. I started a sourdough. I wasn't ahead of the sourdough trend, but I did start a sourdough in January of 2020, before we all went crazy making sourdough, and before there was a global pandemic. And so I had mine alive since then, and there was 6 months would go by and I wouldn't feed it.
Really?
Yeah, because I wasn't using it.
I know, but this has
whatever.
been like
I think you can bring it back to life.
okay.
Yeah, you need a new jar. You need to feed it. You need a new jar.
There's probably hooch on top, which I
There
will.
definitely is.
All right.
But you can bring that. I guarantee you can bring it back to life.
I think you document it and we'll show it later on an
Yeah.
episode. Like
Okay.
open it for us.
Yeah, it would be like, okay,
And
look,
so
I did
come
it.
back and see Ami's year-old starter.
I did nothing with this for a year, but leave it in the back of my fridge. And now I'm just sort of like, I should check it out.
Yeah, but you just don't want to throw it out because
Just in case it's okay, you know. I guess if you don't see any mold on it, it should be fine.
it should be fine. You know, yeah, lots of people. It's not uncommon for people to like just like let it chill in the back of the fridge. I will tell you what happened to me. So mine was going on like 4 years old, and I opened the fridge one day, and I hadn't been feeding it. It was chilling for months, and it was grand, but it didn't look. It was the same as always. There was a little bit of hooch on top. It was not a huge sourdough. It was small. I opened the fridge one day. The whole glass, they exploded. The glass had broken into. It was a big Wex jar, broken into.
Whoa.
The whole thing in the fridge.
It was too alive. It was too powerful.
But it wasn't even, didn't look like it was doing, it wasn't like I just fed it and it was like gassy or bubbly. It was just chilling. And then I just opened it up and it was split in half.
When you put a lid on the sourdough starter, should it be loosely put on or somehow breathable? Or
That's a really good question. They suggest, no, it doesn't have to be, but they don't suggest like a screw on top, like in one piece.
Yeah.
They suggest a screw on top with 2 pieces, or do a glass lid, or you can do a wooden kind of with a seal on it, you know, when you can kind of really shove it in.
Yeah.
When you first make your sourdough, in the first 2 days or so, sometimes people even do it for a week, you don't cover it. So you let the bacteria, but you put like a cheesecloth, or you put a kitchen paper,
you want the wild yeast.
because you want the wild yeast. That's when you're getting that. But it's a really good question.
Yeah.
But it just was exploded.
Now, I want to know, have you two seen the influencer and baker on Instagram and TikTok? His name is B. Dylan Hollis, and he takes these old recipe books and like really outdated recipes and makes them on TikTok, and he's hilarious and funny, and he does it in a very funny way. But he'll like, I saw one that was like a bean pie, and so he's like opening a can of beans, or just like weird things that you don't see often nowadays. But I saw him make this interesting recipe. It was called Anzac cookies / biscuits. I'm not 100% sure, but it's an Australian cookie, and Australia Day is coming up. And so I thought we could kind of talk about those cookies. And like, had you ever heard of Anzac cookies before?
Yeah, I used to make them a lot as a child.
Really?
Yeah, like I know them pretty well. You know, we would get a lot of influence from like Australia. And I think I had Australian cookbooks and stuff. And, you know, being a kid who made a ton of cookies, Anzac cookies was one that was like really easy to make. And it contains golden syrup, which is an ingredient that we bake with a lot in Ireland. put the recipe in I'm thinking now, my first cookbook, in the first chapter, wooden spoon and bowl, because you can make them like by hand just with a wooden spoon and bowl. And they're delicious. I actually made you ladies some here today as a treat. And they are oats and some coconut, a little bit of flour, golden syrup, sugar, you know, the usual suspects. There's no spice or anything. They're simple, they're caramelly, they're really delicious, and they're like a little bit salty.
I'm excited to try it. I had never heard of them before seeing his video, and I was so curious.
Yeah. It seems, I mean, it's sort of like an oatmeal cookie, but golden syrup is sort of a unique ingredient in that.
Yeah.
And what is golden syrup?
Golden syrup is an inverted sugar. So it is like, we don't have corn syrup in Ireland. And outside of the US, I don't know, I'm pretty sure it's hard to come by. If you think about the way Americans have dark golden syrup, it'd be something like that. But it has, yes, like a strong caramelly flavor. So it's an inverted sugar, so you can replace it with honey, but then you do get a stronger honey flavor. So it has more it's like a caramel syrup. You know, but like I said, honey would be a good substitute. And honey would give it nice flavor, but sometimes people find honey a little bit overpowering. Sure. So let me grab the cookies.
Okay.
Vito.
Whoa.
Hit me with the cookies, Vito.
Oh my gosh,
So
I
look
can
at those.
smell them.
It smells so
Aren't
good.
they pretty? But like, look at, I was going to hold it up here. They're like golden brown. They're thin. They're biscuits. So they're like kind of crisp.
I was going to say, when you say they're a biscuit, what do you mean?
Like
It just looks like a cookie to me.
yeah, like it's well, see how like I think you'll see the difference when you taste them. They're crispy. Biscuits are crispy.
I see.
Where cookies in America are kind of soft and chewy a little bit. And not every single one, but like this is what we would call, we would never have called anything a cookie, even though some stuff are cookies, but our word is biscuit. They have golden syrup, they have golden syrup, yes, but they have baking soda, which you have to activate. So you put it, you dissolve it in a bit of hot water, and then you put it into your wet ingredients, and it bubbles up, and that's why you get this crinkle. And it's really it like makes them look really good, and they smell really good. Taste them.
I'm like,
and then there's
yeah,
coconut.
can I have one?
Yeah. No, like, stop talking.
Let me have one.
They're just caramelly and delicious, and they're such a great cookie for kids.
Oh my goodness.
Aren't they yummy? I would make these all the time as a child.
Wow.
I love the coconut.
Yeah.
It kind of tastes like what's that Girl Scout cookie that has coconut?
Tag along.
A Samoa. Yeah, it has like that same like.
With no chocolate.
Oh no, chocolate.
These are so good.
So good. You guys
Wow.
want one?
Sure.
Wow. This is like one of those more than the sum of their parts cookies. You know, it's like, some like flour and.
You know what it might be like? What's a 7-layer bar? What's that? But without chocolate.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I mean, what is that? That's like graham cracker crust, and it has coconut, chocolate, nuts. Are there nuts in there?
I don't know. This recipe is on my website as of now on biggerbolderbacon.com.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Just in time for Australia Day.
Oh. It's a very important holiday. I celebrate it every year.
Yes, just to make these cookies.
My best friend is Australian. And then I'm one of my really good friends. And my sister lives in Australia.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Well, perfect. Well, if you're looking for a fun way to celebrate Australia Day, go to Bigger Bolder Baking and make these Anzac cookies. That was all I had this week for Hot from the Oven. Thank you so much for letting us snack mid-episode here. No, please eat it. I'm going to just segue us into In the Mix here, because I thought we could talk about experimenting with baking alternatives. And so while you finish those cookies, I'm going to explain what that means. So what is experimenting with baking alternatives? It basically means trying new or non-traditional ingredients or methods in baking to achieve specific goals or address things like dietary preferences, restrictions, or just creative desires. It often involves substituting standard baking ingredients with alternatives to create something unique or accommodate different needs. So, to put it a little bit more simply, substituting things like butter, eggs, flour, what can you use in place of those things in your baking? So not necessarily for any particular reason, but just what are options to use. So I thought we could kind of go down that list, starting with butter, and just talk about some alternatives.
Ami and I have done different research on this kind of stuff. And the good thing about it is, like, today there's a lot of alternatives, and they're not. I remember, like, years and years ago, if you wanted to replace eggs, you would have to go to like a health food store and buy egg replacer because we didn't really know what else to do. But now, and the good thing about it is that like some of the substitutions available they could be stuff you have already at home, like applesauce and mashed bananas. And they can also be used in place, like butter. You can use applesauce, but you can also use applesauce to replace eggs. So lots of them can be used for different substitutions. So like I said, applesauce is a good one. We always have applesauce in my house. For butter in the melted variety, you can also go with like melted with coconut oil, which as long as you're okay with that flavor. Like there's melted butter in this cookie. You totally could have put coconut oil in this cookie, which would have just enhanced that coconut flavor even more.
Oh yeah.
And then there's yogurt, nut butters, a source of protein, but also like fat and oil. Ami, what you got?
Avocado. It's fatty. It's I've not done a lot of experimenting with it, but I know that you can use it as a butter substitute. There's so much oil, natural oil in there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and it's really mildly flavored. You might get a little bit of a green tinge in things that you make. So depending on what it is that you're making.
Yeah. You mentioned smashed bananas already for eggs. Are there other alternatives you can use for eggs?
For eggs, loads. I have a chart on biggerbolderbaking.com that has, this is so crazy, but it was for years and years was our most popular single post on the website was how to substitute eggs. Wow. And the chart lays out exactly the quantity of like however many eggs, use this. And that was, applesauce, like I said, mashed bananas, tofu. You can use flax egg, which is ground flax, not the seeds, but actually ground flax. Some people use chia seeds to replace eggs. Like I said, silken tofu. For egg whites, people do use aquafaba. Aquafaba can be a little bit tricky and a bit temperamental. I've baked with them. I've had them turn out well, but not every single time.
I wonder if when that post, it was probably before this, but if that egg conversion chart was really popular during, we've kind of already talked about COVID.
It was very much during COVID, but we created this, I'd say I made it in 2018, 2017, something like that. Maybe even earlier. This substitution, when the whole, the country and the world ran out of flour, everyone was at home baking, but their recipe that they looked up asked for cake flour. It asked for eggs. Eggs were actually like super rare and you couldn't find them. And this chart and all my bold baking basics recipes, like how to make cake flour, how to make vanilla, how to make your own cream cheese, how to make your own butter, went off the charts.
I'm sure.
Absolutely off the charts.
You couldn't buy eggs here in LA. I remember I was one of these people. I wanted to make brownies, I think. And I used smashed banana. And when you were saying that made me think of it.
How did that turn out?
I mean, you could taste the banana. It was almost tasted like brownie banana bread.
Right. I think that's ultimately the issue with certain alternatives with anything that emit a flavor. If you want that flavor, we did an experiment once where we made the same pound cake recipe 6 times, but we did something different with butter. We did applesauce, silken tofu, banana, flax eggs. There was a couple of other things, and they all had slightly different results. But I do remember using yogurt or silken tofu.
Yeah, the yogurt one. Remember that?
Yeah, those were
those ended up being heavy.
But they were good in that they didn't change the flavor of what you were trying to make. Whereas the applesauce cake and the banana cake were delicious, but one tasted like apples and one tasted like bananas. Yeah. So if you're not going for that flavor, you want something a little more neutral.
Yeah. Flax eggs, if you have, which you brought, you might have a banana over ground flax. But ground flax are very good for you. When this is probably like what Ami would do, but like replace bananas in pancakes with like a flax egg and stuff like that. And like I do that in George's. I put like ground flax into his pancakes. It's a nice little added nutrient boost.
Yeah.
And also I feel like they're not very fatty. It's not very fatty, so it stays fresh in your cupboard for quite some time. Or you can keep it in your fridge if you want to.
What would be some good alternatives for white flour?
Well, whole wheat flour, for sure. Like, you can replace on most baked goods, you could replace half your white flour with whole wheat flour. You're going to get a heartier result, but it won't be bad. I think what's hard is if you do 100% whole wheat flour of something, it tends to get heavy.
Chewy.
But yeah. But even, like a quarter to a half of whole wheat flour is always, it can actually add flavor. It can add a nuttiness to things. You and I, Gemma and I, have done some experimenting with like making like gluten-free flours. We did one.
So we made an almond flour mix that could be replaced for all-purpose flour. And it was almond flour and tapioca flour. And we found through our testing that if you go to biggerbolderbaking.com, it tells you exactly how to use this flour mix, and not just in my recipes, but you can, for cup, you can use this mixture. And for any of your gluten-free baking, you need the tapioca flour. Without it, it gives the flour your almond structure. And it makes it more elasticy and more like a regular flour. Whereas when we just replaced almond flour for all-purpose flour, our products, we made a muffin that was really oily, like all of the wet ingredients just soaked out of the muffins and the cake and everything. They were really heavy.
Right.
So
Quite have the structure.
no, it didn't. So we came up with a really good solution, and that's on biggerbolderbaking.com. And I show you how to use it in different recipes, and then I tell you how you can use it in like my recipes, and then I tell you how you can use it in your own recipes. And almond flour is lovely because it gives you a little bit of protein. It's expensive, but it is a lovely flour to nut to bake with. It gives you a nice texture.
I remember when you made us a few episodes ago the keto bread.
Yeah.
That was with the almond flour, right? And I remember it had like a moist.
It does.
Moisture to it.
Yeah, it does. As when it's used, when you get the right balance, it can soak up the liquid and make, like lovely, like flourless chocolate cakes, really moist and spongy and everything.
Amazing.
Right. I mean, I think that when you're thinking about flour substitutions, you think about like what is flour adding to your baked goods, and you've got sort of the bulk of the baked good is the flour, the structure, elasticity. So you want to be able to recreate that in an alternative flour. The issue with alternative flours is they don't have gluten, which is what you're trying to avoid, but the gluten provides the elasticity. So what else will give you that?
Yeah. So it's all trial and error. Like not everything is created differently. Like oat flour will absorb liquid differently than almonds will. So it's not one for one. These are not one for one. So definitely whichever one you choose, do your research. And I will tell you, if you are gluten-free, or if you are doing gluten-free baking, something that I've had, which I'd say is kind of foolproof, is 1-for-1 King Arthur's gluten-free flour or Bob's Red Mill's gluten-free flour. And I find I've never had an issue with either of those.
Yeah, I've had to do that before. It can be intimidating when you have to substitute with a gluten-free flour, because if it's not the one-to-one, you kind of have to do conversions. Yeah. And I was making a cake for my boyfriend's mom, and she was at the time not eating gluten. And so I got really intimidated to do it. And then I think it was the King Arthur's 1-for-1. And I was nervous. It was my first time. You're making a cake for a bunch of people. And it actually turned out really good. And then I didn't tell anybody that it was gluten-free. And then they were like, wow, this cake is so good. And I was like, it's gluten-free. I was really proud of that. But thank you both so much for all your expertise on alternatives in baking. We're actually going to hear now from Natalia Lima of Curious Cat Bakery, which is a vegan bakery, and we're going to get her thoughts on alternatives in baking.
Hi, Gemma, and everyone I need to know. I'm Natalia Lima, and I own Curious Cat Bakery, an all-vegan bakery where I make vegan croissants that taste exactly like the real deal. So I think I'm uniquely qualified to talk to you about how to replace different ingredients in recipes to make them vegan. Now, everybody asks me as a vegan baker, how can I make a cake without eggs? Or how can I make a cookie without butter? And here's the answer that nobody wants to hear. It depends. I know it's not what you wanted to hear, but it is the truth. In fact, that's the biggest mistake that I see bakers making when making something vegan is just replacing the one egg with chia seeds or applesauce. It's not going to turn out the way you want it. It's not going to taste like you remember it. See, the key to making really great vegan bakes is realizing that a recipe is not just a list of ingredients, it's actually a chemical formula. All of these ingredients react and act together to make something great at the end. They are all reacting to each other. So if you take one of them out, you need to think about what is that ingredient doing? What is that function of that ingredient in the recipe? So if you have an egg in a cake, for example, maybe it's providing moisture. So in that case, something like applesauce would be a great replacement. Now, if that egg is providing structure and is making the cake rise, then applesauce is not going to do anything for you. You're still going to have a flat cake at the end. So what you need to do is use something like baking soda and vinegar, because those two react, create bubbles, and as a result, your cake rises. And that will give you a fluffy cake at the end. Now, I know all of this sounds a little bit overwhelming, a little bit like a lot. It is in the beginning, but I promise once you start looking at your recipe and investigating and doing a little bit of sleuthing into what is actually doing what in that recipe, it gets so much easier. And lucky for you, I do have a lot of videos on my YouTube channel where I break it down in a playlist exactly how to replace eggs, how to replace milk, how to replace butter in different recipes. I even have a little bit of a cheat sheet where I explain to you if it's providing moisture, use this. If it's providing structure, use that. And it will help you along the way. Just go to YouTube and search for Curious Cat Bakery and you'll find them all listed in there. Thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoy this and happy baking.
We're back with the Bold Baking Hotline where we answer questions directly from you. And our first question here is from Allison, and she wants to know, I want to make chocolate cream pie that calls for 6 egg yolks. What should I substitute for? I'm assuming for the egg yolks.
Chocolate cream pie. So it's a ganache base
Or a chocolate custard.
or a puddingy, custardy thing.
You know, we on Bigger Bolder Baking made a avocado chocolate pudding. It was just avocados, cocoa powder, honey. I just wonder if that would be an interesting filling for a chocolate cream pie. That would be vegan. It would be egg-free.
Yeah. The one good thing about avocado is that it's incredibly smooth, and a lot of the substitutes that we've given for eggs are not. So you'll have the texture of applesauce, you'll have the texture of banana and the flavor, you'll have the texture of flax egg, which I wouldn't recommend, silken tofu, because you want to keep that nice soft texture. So I'd say silken tofu, or I know it sounds a bit off the wall, but like maybe avocado.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Or you could, it's not quite the same as a chocolate cream pie, but if you did something a little bit thinner, like a tart instead of a pie, and just made a ganache with cream and chocolate.
That's what I would also suggest, like do a ganache pie rather than, I think what it sounds like she's talking about is a pudding.
Chocolate pudding pie. It sounds like she wants to make a chocolate pudding pie.
Which you do need eggs for.
Right, yeah. But if you do ganache though, it's so rich, I would make a tart.
Yeah.
An open-faced tart so that you have a little less ganache per bite.
Great. Our next question comes from Hallie, and she wants to know, can I use a combination of substitutes for one recipe if the recipe ingredients calls for 3 eggs and I do not have enough of one of the same substitute?
I would say no to that question because it's just there's more variables now that can go wrong. So I would say do a different recipe, make it another day. With substitutions, there always is a little bit of risk. And I always say this, you very rarely will get the exact same recipe as what I made or somebody else made if you're changing the recipe.
Right.
And we can give you the best advice, even if, you do use like the flour that like my almond flour mix. It doesn't mean you're going to get the exact same cake that I did with all-purpose flour, but you'll get a really good option. The more that you mess with the ingredients, the more things can go wrong. And then what happens is people email me and they tell me, I made your chocolate cake and it exploded in my oven. And I will say, what happened? Well, I followed your recipe exactly, but I did this, this, and this. And it's like, okay, so you changed the recipe. So it could, like, it's I'd say, you know, choose wisely, and don't do a million different variations, or don't do a million different substitutes in the recipe.
Great.
Yeah, you know, if somebody wants to make something and they only have 1 egg and the recipe needs 3 eggs, you might consider just making a third of the recipe instead.
Yeah.
You know, you could just do a little something.
Great. Well, thank you both so much. That's all the questions we had this week for the Bold Baking Hotline. And thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, rate, and review us anywhere you listen to podcasts. And you can catch every episode of Need to Know on YouTube.
From HRN and the Bold Baking Network, you are watching the Need to Know Baking Entertainment podcast.